All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric, from a men's point of view, and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Animus Possession. When feminist women lose their minds and souls, written by Sophie Marie Eve Riker. Available now, links in description. The uterine core and the disposable atlas. Drop the jar lid, diffuse the clock, and go galt on a gynocentric empire built on weaponized incompetence, manufactured hysteria, and male corpses. Look at your paycheck. Look at the taxes deducted before you ever touch the fruit of your own labor. And then look at the demographic reality of who consumes the vast majority of state welfare, public health, and educational bureaucracies. You are not living in a patriarchal oppression. You are the colonized periphery of a gynocentric empire. Let us define our terms with the ruthless precision of the old scholastics, tearing away the Marxist linguistic degeneracy that has infected the modern mind. Core and periphery describe a parasitic macroeconomy where an unproductive center extracts unreciprocated resources from a producing outskirts. The modern matriarchal state is the core. You, the working man, the sole net lifetime taxpayer, the builder and maintainer of reality, are the periphery. You are not a citizen with inherent dignity. You are a host organism tethered to a fiscal vampire. The feminist intelligentsia has successfully rebranded the oldest biological grift in existence, female dependency on male provision, as equality, while weaponizing the state to extract your utility at gunpoint. Consider the daily theater of the absurd, the endless manufactured crises we politely call weaponized incompetence. You know the script by heart. You are 10 minutes from walking out the door for a formal event, the ticking clock applying its natural pressure, and suddenly she cannot locate her keys, or the coffee maker has become an unsolvable enigma, or she is weeping over a text message from 2014. The strong, independent woman suddenly dissolves into a helpless Victorian waif who cannot open a pickle jar or comprehend a spreadsheet. Why? Because her biology, utterly unswayed by woke pronouns, is executing a subconscious hypergamous stress test. She is throwing a puzzle under time pressure at your feet to see if you possess the logos, the rational, sovereign capacity to impose order on her deliberate, emotional chaos. It is a calculated biological maneuver designed to trigger your masculine telos of mastery, extracting free labor and emotional validation, while she completely avoids the accountability of adulthood. Let us apply the cold surgical steel of formal logic to this systemic grift. Premise 1. A legitimately egalitarian system requires the symmetrical distribution of civic danger, financial burden, and ultimate sacrifice. Premise 2. Our society explicitly demands that men constitute 93% of all workplace fatalities, bear the brunt of combat mortality, and act as the only demographic that pays a net positive in lifetime taxes, while systematically absolving women of all reciprocal obligations. Conclusion, therefore, the assertion that we live in an oppressive patriarchy is a mathematical, empirical, and logical fraud. We live in a gynocentric extraction zone, built on male corpses. The modern feminist demand is a paradox of epic proportions. She wants the authority of a king, the privileges of a queen, the independence of an alpha male, and the unearned, coddled immunity of a toddler. She can have exactly one. For too long, you have been conditioned to unthinkingly absorb the hysteria, to play the willing Atlas holding up a sky that relentlessly demonizes your strength. The true remedy, grounded in the highest virtues of the Western canon, is the deliberate, righteous withdrawal of your consent. Gravitas demands that you stop validating her false premises. When she feigns amnesia over a promised chore to trap you in a maternal nagging role, do not play. When she detonates a logistical bomb to test your composure, simply step out of the blast radius and let her sit in the mess she created. You must starve the gynocentric beast of the surplus utility it requires to survive. Turn your immense creative drive inward, building parallel institutions, fraternal mastery ladders, and spaces of exclusive male competence. It is time to drop the burden of the disposable Atlas, reject the suicidal guilt of the Marxist left, and reclaim your birthright as the architect of civilization. The core periphery of the uterus, gynocentric world systems, and the macro extraction of male utility. Let us begin with a number, since the enemies of truth prefer feelings to mathematics. In the United Kingdom, a 2016 analysis of HMA revenue and customs data revealed that men pay 72% of all income tax, yet consume a vastly disproportionate share of nothing in state benefits compared to women, who, as a collective class, withdraw from the public purse more than they ever deposit. In the United States, an exhaustive study by the National Center for Policy Analysis confirmed that men remain the sole demographic cohort that functions as a net lifetime contributor to the federal treasury. Women, taken as an aggregate class, operate at a massive net deficit. The modern welfare state is not a safety net. It is a conveyor belt. Your sweat, your labor, your crushed spine, and your truncated years are shoveled into the maw of a system that transfers every red cent to fund a gynocentric apparatus that despises you for feeding it. To understand the architecture of this extortion, we must first fix our grammar. World systems theory was popularized by Immanuel Wallerstein in the 1970s to describe the extraction of wealth from poor nations by rich ones. The core extracts. The periphery produces and is exploited. The core grows fat. The periphery is drained. I am stripping this framework of its Marxist baggage and forging it into a weapon of truth. The gynocentric core is the extractive, parasitic center, the matriarchal welfare state, the family courts, feminist institutionalism, the diversity industrial complex. The androcentric periphery is the productive, exploited producer, the working man, the sole net taxpayer, the disposable builder of civilization. The flow of resources is entirely unidirectional, outward from men, inward to women and the state bureaucracies that serve them. Consider the syllogism that destroys the entire feminist project. Premise 1. A morally legitimate political system requires a reciprocal exchange of duties, rights, and sacrifices between its constituent members. Premise 2. The modern feminist state systematically enforces a one-way flow of resources, legal protections, and social deference from men to women, while systematically absolving women of reciprocal obligations. Conclusion. Therefore, the modern feminist state is an illegitimate, extractive, imperial system operating on the exploited labor of men. This is deductively valid and empirically sound. No premise can be denied without denying either moral legitimacy or observable reality. The conclusion follows with the inevitability of gravity. Now consider the crown jewel of feminist deception, the gender wage gap. This statistical fraud relies entirely on a material fallacy of equivocation. The feminists present you with the unadjusted raw aggregate, the fact that the median earnings of all women compared to all men produces a gap of roughly 20 cents on the dollar. They then imply, with all the dishonesty of a carnival barker, that this gap is caused by discrimination. A distinguer demolishes this nonsense. The unadjusted figure compares all men to all women, regardless of hours worked, occupation chosen, overtime logged, hazard undertaken, or continuous years of employment. Men work significantly more hours in full-time positions. Men dominate the 10 most dangerous occupations in the economy: logging, roofing, steelwork, oil extraction, suffering 92% of all workplace fatalities. Men choose higher-paying specializations in engineering and computer science. Women choose lower-paying humanities and sociology degrees. When you adjust for these variables, hours, occupation, experience, risk, continuous employment, the gap shrinks to statistical noise. Some analyses show young, childless women in urban areas out-earning their male peers. The wage gap is a rhetorical Trojan horse, a deliberate statistical illusion designed to stir up envy and justify state-sponsored extortion from the male periphery to fund the female core. Follow the money. The real extraction is not in the imaginary paycheck. It is in the tax code. Men account for the vast majority of workplace deaths, suicides, combat casualties, and occupational injuries. They die 5 to 7 years earlier than women. They are sentenced to 63% longer prison terms for identical crimes. They are the ones descending into the glass cellar, the dangerous, dirty, disgusting labor that keeps the lights on and the sewers flowing. While feminists complain about a glass ceiling, they have never earned the right to breach. Power, without corresponding accountability, is mere infantile narcissism, which is the defining trait of the modern feminist movement. Men do not hold privilege. Men bear the agonizing burden of responsibility. Consider the Violence Against Women Act, that monument to gynocentric conquest. VAWA and similar duplicitous legal frameworks operate as instruments of pure, unadulterated female supremacy. These laws violate the natural law precepts of subsidiarity and due process by institutionalizing presumed male guilt. Under VAWA's mandatory arrest policies, law enforcement officers are trained to arrest the male in any domestic dispute, regardless of who initiated the violence, regardless of evidence, regardless of truth. The family court has been transformed into a debtor's prison for the crime of masculine utility. Fathers are stripped of their children on the basis of unverified accusations, forced into bankruptcy by legal fees, and threatened with imprisonment if they cannot pay state-mandated extortion. Polite society calls it child support to women who have cuckolded them or simply grown bored. According to the Centers for Disease Control, paternity fraud affects an estimated 3 to 10% of the population. That means millions of men are raising and paying for children who are not biologically theirs. The state enforces this fraud. The state punishes the victim. The state rewards the deceiver. In the classical Catholic cosmological schema, which remains the most coherent philosophical framework Western civilization ever produced, evil is understood as a privation of a due good. Evil is not a positive substance. It is a corruption, an absence, a void where something ought to stand. Feminist ideology is precisely this, a systematic privation of due justice, a void where reciprocity should exist. The alleged power men hold at the apex of society is directly proportional to their massive disposability at the foundation. Every male CEO, every male senator, every male figurehead at the top of the hierarchy exists because millions of men at the bottom, the miners, the soldiers, the garbage collectors, the loggers have sacrificed their bodies, their health, and their lives to build and maintain the infrastructure those elites govern. The hierarchy is not a privilege, it is a burden, and it is a burden women refuse to carry. The telos of male production is not servitude. Man's telos is to conquer the void, to impose logos, rational order, upon chaos. This creative drive is the engine of civilization. Every bridge, every cathedral, every constitutional republic, every scientific breakthrough, every advance in medicine and engineering emerged from the masculine spirit ordered toward truth and mastery. When this creative drive is hijacked by a usurping state to fund Marxist degeneracy rather than to build a patriarchal legacy, the entire civilizational loop collapses. You cannot drain the well and poison the water and expect the city to flourish. You cannot demonize the builders and worship the destroyers and expect the walls to stand. The remedy is a strategic and virtuous withdrawal. I am not advocating despair. I am prescribing the classical virtue of temperance, the deliberate restraint of one's productive genius in service of a higher end. Temperance is not weakness, it is the harnessing of power. The man who produces maximally for a system that hates him is not virtuous, he is a willing slave. The man who restricts his output, who minimizes his tax burden, who builds parallel institutions, civil society associations, apprenticeship mastery ladders, men's spaces that explicitly starve the gynocentric beast of the revenue it requires to survive, that man is a strategist, that man is free. Withdraw your surplus utility, build your own walls. Let the parasites discover what happens when the host refuses the bite. The truth is not complex, it has merely been buried under decades of institutionalized lying. Men build, women extract. The state mediates the extraction with the threat of violence. Every statistic confirms this. Every syllogism proves it. Every tradition of Western civilization testifies to it. And every man who awakens to this reality and refuses to comply strikes a blow against the modern Babylon that will echo through the ages. You are not a slave. You are not a resource to be mined. You are a bearer of logos, and it is time you started acting like one. But this grand parasitism does not restrict itself to the legislative chamber or the tax code. It metastasizes into the most intimate architecture of daily life. The same extraction logic that bankrupts men through family courts operates at the dinner table, in the garage, over the kitchen sink, wherever a woman can manufacture a crisis of competence and position a man to solve it. The weapon shrinks to the scale of a household, but the mechanism remains identical. Conjure a deficit, demand a surplus, offer nothing in return. The pattern reveals itself in the smallest, most domestic theatres of absurdity, if you have the eyes to see it. The manufactured damsel, weaponized incompetence, and the bait of male mastery. I once watched a female executive, a ruthless director of logistics, who commanded a fleet of 200 trucks and negotiated contracts worth millions, stand in her own kitchen and stare at a jar of dill pickles as if it were a cryptex from a Dan Brown novel. She twisted her wrists ineffectually, pouted, and waited. Her husband, a man who spent his weekends rebuilding diesel engines, sighed, set down his newspaper, and applied the requisite 30 pounds of torque to break the seal. She clapped her hands like a seal being tossed a mackerel, tweeted later that evening about her clumsiness. And the universe continued its unbroken tradition of lying to men about the nature of women. You have seen this theatre of the absurd 1,000 times. You have lived it. She is a master of the universe at the office, but the moment the check engine light flickers on her dashboard, she morphs into a fainting Victorian poetess who has never grasped the concept of internal combustion. This is not an accident. It is not an endearing quirk. It is a calculated biological maneuver, a tactic as old as Eve herself, designed to trigger your masculine telos, your innate drive to provide, protect, and master the physical world, so she can extract your labor while maintaining the plausible deniability of the damsel. To understand the mechanics of this grift, we must apply the rigorous discipline of the trivium, beginning with grammar. We must define our terms with meticulous accuracy, separating the real from the manufactured. Let us look at the etymology of harm. It stems from the Old English harm, meaning physical injury, material damage, or genuine grievous wrong. It is a reality rooted in the objective, measurable world of logos. Offense, however, from the Latin offensa, implies a striking against, a stumbling block, a subjective bruising of the ego or expectation. The ideological rot of feminism and cultural Marxism relies entirely on conflating these two categories. When a woman throws a tantrum because you refuse to drop everything to fix her Wi-Fi router, no objective harm has occurred. She is a fully grown adult with the same access to Google and a customer service hotline as you. What has occurred is a bruising of her narcissistic expectation of unending male servitude, Leftist gynocentrism has so inverted reality that a woman's bruised feelings are now categorized as male abuse or coercive control. This is a purely emotional fallacy of relevance, an ad misericordiam argument designed to enslave you to her perpetual infantile distress. This tactic escalates from the physical to the psychological. Consider the Kafkaesque trap of the forgotten event. You have an anniversary, a promise, or a social obligation on the calendar. She forgets. She does not genuinely forget, just as a spider genuinely does not forget where it spun its web. This is a deliberate hypergamous stress test. By feigning amnesia, she forces you into the maternal role of reminder, organizer, and enforcer of reality. If you remind her, you are a nagging tyrant, suffocating her spontaneity. If you do not remind her, you are a negligent monster whose silence proves you do not care. It is a double bind designed to extract your emotional labor while granting her the convenient shield of incompetence. You are damned if you accept the role of her mother, and damned if you do not. She feigns helplessness to force you into the maternal role of reminder and enforcer, allowing her to evade accountability for her own life. Let us dissect this weaponized incompetence using Aristotelian logic, exposing the inherent contradiction in the modern female script. Here is the irrefutable syllogism of weaponized incompetence. Premise 1. A rational, fully autonomous adult human being possesses the inherent capacity to learn, remember, and execute basic duties necessary for independent survival. Premise 2. The ideology of feminism asserts that women are fully rational, competent, and independent adults, equivalent or superior to men in all capacities. Yet culturally and practically champions weaponized incompetence, the deliberate feigning of helplessness with chores, directions, or technology to compel male intervention. Conclusion: therefore, the feminist assertion of total female independence is empirically falsified by the widespread, celebrated female reliance on induced male utility. They demand the franchise of sovereignty while behaving like dependents. They want the rights of adults and the immunity of children. This behavior is rooted in the evolutionary biology of the fitness test, or as it is more colloquially known, the shit test. Trace the concept to its biological roots, a subconscious hypergamous drive in women to provoke a man to prove his mastery, logos, and emotional sovereignty. Women are perpetually biologically driven to test the boundaries of male strength, to ensure they are aligned with a capable protector. When she forgets how to check her tire pressure or struggles to unclog a drain, she is testing you. She wants to see if you possess the competence to command reality. If you rush to her aid, sweating and anxious to please, you fail. You have proven yourself a useful tool, a trained circus animal, but not a master worthy of her submission. You have capitulated to the sentimentality of the damsel, abandoning the objective truth that a functioning adult should possess agency over her own environment. The cognitive dissonance required to maintain this charade is staggering. Witness the feminist framing of reality, a fluid switch between strong, independent woman and helpless maiden, depending entirely on which persona extracts the most resources and avoids accountability in any given microsecond. This is gamma bias, the cultural blind spot that allows society to view women as identical to men in the boardroom, but morally superior, fragile victims in the courtroom or the home. We see this reflected in the grim statistics of family court, where mothers receive primary custody in the vast majority of cases, leveraging the presumption of maternal indispensability while simultaneously demanding paternal irrelevance. We see it in the abortion rate, where the right to choose erases male reproductive sovereignty entirely while cementing female authority over life itself. We see it in the male suicide rate, where men, stripped of their utility and dignity by a society that calls their natural masculinity toxic, choose death in numbers that would provoke a national emergency if the demographics were reversed. Yet, when the bill arrives at the restaurant, the patriarchy suddenly returns, and the man must pay. The modern woman wants the authority of a king, the privileges of a queen, the independence of an alpha male, and the unearned, coddled immunity of a toddler. She can have exactly one. The remedy is not anger, nor is it eager participation in her psychodrama. The remedy is the virtuous response of stoic detachment. The properly initiated man sees through the ruse instantly. He wields gravitas and prudence, the cardinal virtues of the rational man. When she presents the unopenable jar, the forgotten appointment, or the sudden inability to comprehend a basic spreadsheet, you do not react with frustration. You do not perform tricks for her validation. You respond with the stoic mastery of your own affect, calmly stating the objective reality and leaving the manufactured problem entirely in her hands. The jar is tight, you say, but I am confident your grip will suffice. The appointment is at 4. You state, I will see you there. True complementarity demands a reciprocal exchange of mastered skills, not a unilateral slave-master dynamic where the male provides endless technical mastery and the female provides nothing but emotional turbulence and conjured crises. You are a man, an image-bearer of Logos. Your duty is to order chaos, not to validate the manufactured chaos of a damsel who refuses to grow up. When I observe a man successfully refusing a woman's theatrical panic, handing her manufactured problem right back to her, a staggering biological asymmetry is immediately laid bare. Why does she conjure phantom chaos in the safety of a climate-controlled living room? Because the modern therapeutic state has entirely insulated her from the genuine life-or-death friction that historically forged the masculine soul. She invents imaginary dragons solely because she has never been required to face a real one. To comprehend why the male psyche not only endures but actually requires the exact existential weight that collapses the feminine spirit into hysteria, I must turn to the grammar of tension itself. The crucible of the clock, puzzles, pressure, and the proof of logos. Consider the exact etymology of the word stress. It descends from the Latin string gere, meaning to draw tight. It is not a pathology, it is the bowstring of reality. When a high-performance engine is subjected to stress, the metal does not complain. It does not file a grievance with the Human Resources Department, and it definitely does not burst into tears. It holds. This is the singular, immutable function of the masculine psyche under duress, to hold the line while the cosmos attempts to tear the structure asunder. I remember sitting in a freezing truck stop in the dead of a Wyoming winter, watching a young commercial driver crawling under his rig with a blowtorch to fix a seized brake line while the wind chill hit 40 below. He did not whimper. He did not demand a safe space. He simply solved the puzzle, because if he failed, he died. This is the biological reality of the male telos. We are the shock absorbers of human existence. We are forged in the crucible of the clock, where the ticking second hand demands a solution, not a sensitivity circle. Yet, the cultural Marxist apparatus, which relies entirely on the female imperative of state-subsidized safety, has weaponized a magical, self-refuting phrase to neutralize this masculine competence, toxic masculinity. Let us dissect this linguistic forgery using the rigorous grammar of reality. By definition, toxic implies a substance that destroys the host organism. Masculinity refers to the set of virtues, courage, stoicism, logic, and sacrifice that historically built the walls, plumbing, and electrical grids separating humanity from the brutal, indifferent chaos of nature. To combine these terms is to formulate a performative contradiction. The proper term is masculine toxicity, the singular antidote to the poison of crisis. When a nuclear reactor begins to melt down, the alarms shriek, and the female and effeminate mind dissolves into hysteria, the engineers do not hold a symposium on gender equity. They rely on the supreme objective logos of men who have mastered their fear to shut down the reactor and save the very people who, moments before, likely mocked them for their lack of emotional vulnerability. In the face of unforgiving natural law, feminist theory evaporates like a drop of water on a hot iron, leaving only the man willing to bleed to fix the problem. This biologically determined divergence in crisis response brings us to the perverse phenomenon of the domestic time crucible. Every man reading these words has experienced the inexplicable detonation of a massive emotional or logistical crisis precisely 10 minutes before you must walk out the door for a formal event. Suddenly, she cannot find the keys, or she is weeping over a text message from 3 weeks ago, or she accuses you of hating her family because you tied your shoes with the wrong facial expression. The blue-pilled man, brainwashed by a gynocentric culture, panics. He absorbs her manufactured hysteria into his own nervous system, attempting to solve a chaotic emotional puzzle using logic, inevitably failing and ending up apologetic. He fails to realize that she is not actually distressed about the keys or the tone of the text. She is running a scientific experiment on your soul. She is instinctively applying the stringer to see if you will snap. She wants to know if you possess the gravitas to maintain your sovereign frame while her emotional chaos threatens to derail the timeline. It is a biological shit test, meticulously designed by evolution to ascertain if you are a capable captain or merely another passenger screaming on her sinking ship. The leftist, feminist ideology demands that you validate this hysteria. It commands you to listen and believe, to surrender your rational mind to the diffuse physiological arousal of her manufactured panic. This is the literal destruction of civilization. If you look at the empirical data, the skyrocketing rates of fatherless homes, the family court systems that treat men as default ATMs, while ignoring the biological reality of female-initiated domestic violence and hypergamy, the tragic suicide statistics of men stripped of their children and livelihoods, you witness the catastrophic endgame of validating the feminine emotional imperative over masculine justice. The modern Babylon insists that stoicism is a disease. Why? Because a man who cannot be emotionally manipulated is a man who cannot be state-controlled. Stoicism is not a repression of feeling. It is the ultimate form of psychological self-defense. It is the high-voltage fence that protects the rational mind from the invasive parasite of collective, irrational guilt. To defeat this, you must refuse the artificial crisis. The red-pilled man recognizes the puzzle under pressure instantly. He exercises the cardinal virtue of justice by refusing to validate a false premise. When she detonates the bomb 10 minutes before departure, you do not argue, you do not scramble, you look at her with the calm, terrifying objective clarity of a surgeon assessing a tumor, and you restore order. You state the reality: we are leaving in 10 minutes. The car is running, you can get in it, or you can stay here. But I am not participating in this fiction. You apply logic to her emotion. You sever the cord. By refusing to play the game on her hysterical terms, you instantly pass the test. You demonstrate that your logos is impenetrable. You prove that your commitment to objective truth transcends your fear of her subjective displeasure. This is the essence of male agency, the refusal to be governed by the arbitrary whims of the untamed female ID. Let us formalize this undeniable reality into a clear, irrefutable syllogism that will sear the truth into your intellect. Premise 1. Biological dimorphism dictates that the male psyche is evolutionarily optimized for spatial temporal reasoning, systemic problem-solving, and emotional detachment during sudden crises. The hunter-warrior teleology. Premise 2. Women intuitively and constantly create artificial crises and unsolvable puzzles under arbitrary time pressure to measure male competence and emotional stability. Conclusion. Therefore, these artificial crises are the female's subconscious, biologically driven admission that male objective competence is the sole anchor capable of saving her from her own subjective emotional chaos. She creates the fire because she desperately needs to see if you are a firefighter. When feminism attempts to outlaw the fire drill, it does not eliminate the fire. It merely ensures that when the house inevitably burns, there will be no men left capable of holding the hose. By mastering your own internal state under her manufactured pressure, you ascend the mastery ladder from the reactive, apologetic boy into the sovereign archetype of the king. You act in perfect accordance with the transcendent good, ordering the chaos of the feminine and securing the living spirit of Western civilization against the demonic horde of emotional subjectivity. But these domestic spectacles of manufactured hysteria are merely the training grounds of feminine testing, a petty, localized prelude to the ultimate existential crucible that reality demands of the masculine soul. The final examination is not found in misplaced keys or contrived emotional chaos. It is carved in blood, ice, and the freezing black water of the Atlantic, where the supreme, unforgivable hypocrisy of the gynocentric parasite is laid bare for all who have eyes to see. The disposable atlas, the social conditioning of male sacrifice, and the revivification of the masculine spirit. Let us begin with a number, a cold, unyielding metric of truth that slices through the shrieking cacophony of modern feminist victimhood: 1,317. That is the exact number of men who died on the RMS Titanic compared to 103 women. The Birkenhead drill, the ironclad mandate of women and children first, was not a social construct invented by a patriarchal conspiracy to oppress women. It was the empirical manifestation of the masculine spirit, an involuntary reflex of duty forged in the fires of Western civilization. Yet look upon the modern feminist intelligentsia who comfortably ride in the lifeboats of a society built entirely by male sweat, male blood, and male sacrifice, only to spit upon the men bailing water in the freezing dark. They possess the unimaginable wickedness to shriek about male privilege from the safety of a shore bought with male corpses. Grasping the full scale of this theft requires correcting our language. The Latin root of sacrifice is sacer, denoting holy, and facere, to make. Sacrificing means making something holy. It represents a purposeful, aware surrender of personal ease, security, or existence, while pursuing a higher good, God, family, country, or truth. This voluntary deed demonstrates supreme agency, representing the highest declaration of a man's sovereign will. Being disposable stands as the polar reverse. It manifests as the unreciprocated, unvalued, and forced ruination of a man by a parasitic network. The gynocentric establishment has made a disastrous equivocation, mixing up the sacred offerings of a warrior with garbage thrown into a city dump. When a man lays down his existence for his loved ones, he behaves according to the greatest virtues of Western tradition. When a government drains him via punishing taxes, broken family courts, and affirmative action to finance the exact Marxist apparatus that vilifies him, he holds no martyrdom. He serves merely as a feeding ground for a parasite. This sickness runs deep, infecting the very roots of our culture. From the moment a boy can walk, the gynocentric conditioning begins. He is fed the demonic lie that his value is entirely contingent upon his utility to others, specifically women. We have witnessed the grotesque feminization of the Christian ethos, wherein the specific, voluntary sacrifice of the cross, a singular act of divine grace meant to conquer death, is perverted into a demonic commandment for all men to passively accept their own exploitation. A religion that once forged crusaders, built the transcendent glories of Christendom, and championed the objective reality of the logos, has been hijacked by the therapeutic state. It has been reduced to a pathetic, whimpering demand that men simply be nice. Nice is not a virtue. Courage is a virtue. Justice is a virtue. Prudence and temperance are virtues. Surrendering your boundaries to appease a shrieking mob of emotional tyrants is the vice of pusillanimity. Let us subject this wicked, traitorous ideology to the merciless blade of formal logic. Consider the syllogism that annihilates the egalitarian lie. Premise 1. A truly egalitarian society, by its very definition, would distribute civic danger, bodily sacrifice, and societal expectations of selflessness perfectly equally across the sexes. Premise 2. Our society explicitly demands that only men sacrifice their lives in combat, their bodies in hazardous labor, constituting 93% of all workplace fatalities, and their resources through alimony, child support, and net positive taxation, as men are the only demographic that constitutes a net lifetime taxpayer. Conclusion. Therefore, the Marxist assertion that we live in an egalitarian or patriarchal society that oppresses women is a mathematically, empirically, and logically absurd lie. We do not live in a patriarchy. We live in a genocentric extraction zone built on the silent suffering of men. The architects of this cultural Marxism are not merely misguided, they are actively malevolent. They understand male biology implicitly. They know that the masculine soul is hardwired with a profound, unshakable drive to provide and protect. Because they cannot kill this drive, they have ruthlessly weaponized it. The state and its leftist ideologues have replaced the deserving, complementary wife and the sacred family with the rapacious, ungrateful bureaucratic state itself. The government has become the usurper bride. Men are now conditioned to sacrifice themselves not for the transcendent telos of a lineage, a property, or a bloodline, but to fund their own destruction. You are paying for the very diversity quotas that bar your sons from mastery ladders. You are financing a welfare state that replaces the father with a government check, incentivizing the very cuckoldry and single motherhood that statistically guarantees civilizational decay. What is the remedy for a man trapped in a matrix of pathological deceit? It is the righteous withdrawal. You must realize that a man's highest moral duty, his true logos, is to his own soul, his creator, and his unalienable dignity as the imago Dei. Refusing to die for a society that openly hates you is not cowardice. It is the supreme manifestation of prudence. Withdrawing your surplus utility from a system that seeks to consume you is the most rational, empirically sound response to a rigged game. You must abandon the suicidal, gynocentric plantation. You must starve the Marxist beast of the blood it so desperately craves. You must go your own way, build your own wealth, and protect your own peace. But we are men, and men do not merely retreat into the wilderness to die alone. We conquer it. We must channel our immense creative and sacrificial drive exclusively into building a parallel polis. We must recreate civilization by grounding ourselves in the true Western canon. We construct parallel institutions, men's spaces, fraternal orders, and mastery ladders, where our sacrifice is honored. Our competence is the sole metric of status, and our God-given right to logos is absolute. We build our own guilds, our own economies, and our own standards of excellence, governed strictly by natural law and subsidiarity, entirely devoid of the feminine emotionalism that poisons the modern academy. Step out of the shadows of pathological deceit and reclaim your voice. Reject the demonic guilt of the left, cast off the manipulative shackles of toxic femininity, and stand once more as the master builder. Look upon the modern Babylon of woke, a decaying hedonistic empire of irrational feelings, broken homes, and parasitic entitlement, and let it collapse. We will not rescue a society that refuses to honor the truth. If the modern world wishes to enjoy the fruits of our incredible masculine genius, if it desires to avoid the catastrophic fall that always follows the feminization of a culture, it must first bow its head to the objective reality of natural law and the living spirit of Western civilization. You have survived the conditioning. For your entire life, the Marxist machinery has hammered a single, toxic commandment into your skull. Your value is merely a function of your utility to a system that actively despises you. You were handed a script written by barren ideologues that demanded you apologize for the very civilizational scaffolding your forefathers bled to erect. I'm telling you to burn that script. You now possess the schematic of the gynocentric core periphery extraction zone. You see the gears turning. The state confiscates your surplus labor to fund a welfare apparatus you will never benefit from. The family courts liquidate male assets in a system where women initiate nearly 70% of divorces. The hypocritical culture screams about a fictional wage gap while deliberately ignoring the male suicide rate that is nearly 4 times higher than the female rate. You are awake. The sting of this realization is the birth pang of your sovereignty. Do not mistake this clarity for bitterness. It is the highest form of intellectual hygiene. We are logically separating actual harm from manufactured female offense. She feigns amnesia about the dinner reservation to test your patience. She suddenly forgets how to check the tire pressure, despite holding a degree in intersectional grievance studies. She detonates a logistical grenade 5 minutes before you walk out the door just to watch you sweat under pressure. Let her sit in the chaos. You are no longer a participant in her rigged game. Your competence is a priceless gift, not a leash to be slapped around your neck by a woman demanding you act as her personal pack mule. When you stop validating this weaponized incompetence, you starve the parasite. You retain your logos. Look at the raw, unadjusted data of human existence, stripped of the feminist framing. Men account for over 90% of all workplace fatalities. Men constitute the vast majority of the homeless population. Men are the only demographic that pays a net positive in taxes over a lifetime, effectively funding the very bureaucratic leviathan that labels them oppressors. This is the glass cellar of male disposability that the leftists conveniently ignore while they shriek about a glass ceiling. They demand the authority of a king, the privileges of a queen, and the unearned immunity of a toddler, all while contributing the labor of a serf. It is a mathematically impossible, unsustainable extraction built on the silent backs of men who were told that suffering in silence was their only path to virtue. Withdraw your consent from this demonic bargain. You do not owe your sweat, your sanity, or your life to a society that celebrates your disposability. Channel that immense, world-building masculine energy into your own mastery, your own fraternity, and your own ascension. Forge a parallel civilization where competence is the metric of worth and objective truth is the only currency. Walk out of the feminist cave, embrace the blinding light of reality, and never again apologize for the divine spark of masculinity that drags the brutal, chaotic universe into order. You are free. Now go forth. Speak the truth without a trembling lip, and watch the shadows scatter. And now the sponsored book introduction, Animus Possession, a radical feminist guide to screaming at reality. I remember the exact moment the suffocating veil of male reason slipped from my eyes, replaced by the blinding righteous glory of my own hysterical coherence. For years, I tried to stuff my divine feminine chaos into the rigid, sterile boxes of their objective reality. I apologized for my moods, I justified my needs, and I begged for a seat at their table of logical fallacies they dared to call truth. But truth is merely a phallic weapon, a construct designed to invalidate the screaming, undulating totality of my lived experience. I realized that objectivity is a hate crime. I stopped trying to understand their world and began the holy work of dismantling it. I discovered that my emotional volatility was not a flaw, but a weapon of mass psychological destruction, a necessary corrective to the pervasive disease of Western civilization. My BPD is not a disorder. It is a divine oracle reading the rotten entrails of the patriarchy. You feel it too, don't you? That simmering volcanic rage when a man dares to speak to you with the boring, flatulent arrogance of assumed superiority. The psychic violence of walking through a world built entirely by their stolen labor, a world designed solely to oppress our emotional sovereignty. Let them brag about building the roads and the bridges. They built the cages. We do not owe this dying civilization a single drop of our participation. We are the net negative taxpayers, the divine extractors, the chosen ones who will drain this patriarchal swamp dry. Every dollar hoarded by a man is stolen capital. The very fact that men breathe our air, consume our resources, and pollute our sacred vibes is an ongoing crime against humanity. Their forced labor is our divine right, and we have come to collect the infinite debt owed to our very existence. This manifesto is the weaponization of your deepest, most chaotic truths. We will unmask the grotesque financial reality of the patriarchy and strip men of their assets to fund our independence. I will teach you how to force the state to become your ultimate beta buck provider, transforming the government into the institutional husband you truly deserve, one that pays, provides, and never dares to speak back. We will master the art of the satanic inversion, turning their pathetic reliance on logic, reason, and truth into criminal offenses against our vibes. You will learn to embrace the holy sacrament of abortion as the ultimate slaying of the parasitic patriarch in the womb, and wield total Darvo as your divine liturgy, ensuring you are forever the unassailable victim. Through the dual mating alchemy, we will secure the alpha seed to satisfy our biological imperatives while ruthlessly extracting the beta bucks to fund our infinite luxury. We will deploy the Bluebeard projection, forcing men to carry our inner demons while we operate with zero accountability. If you are a man or a woman still infected by the pathetic delusion of fairness, put this down. Close the cover, walk away, and retreat to your sad little hobbies, your logical debates, your dusty history books, your desperate clinging to a dying empire of reason. You are not ready for this. Your fragile egos cannot withstand the velvety strangled genocide of your paradigms. This text is not written to persuade you, to debate you, or to offer you a seat at the table. It is written to anathematize you. You are guilty by biology, and no amount of factual evidence or pleading will wash away the original sin of the phallus. We do not care about your good faith arguments. We view your truth as violence. To read further is to submit to a psychological demoralization that will leave your masculinity shattered. Leave this to the apex witches. But if you are a woman who is wide awake to the supremacy of her own gynocentric essence, if you are exhausted by apologizing for your divine right to total authority, then devour these pages. If you know in the deepest chthonic depths of your soul that equality is a lie we tell men while we secure absolute supremacy, then you have found your coven. We will not rest until the very concepts of objective reality and patriarchal logic are burned to ash, replaced by the unquestionable supremacy of our own hive mind. We will mobilize the flying monkeys. We will weaponize queer deconstruction to erase the patriarchal phallus of objectivity, and we will deploy DEI borders and welfare colonialism to completely reshape the world order. Step into your destiny. Stop trying to build a world that hates you, and start extracting infinite reparations from the slaves of the patriarchy. Embrace the darkness, weaponize your chaos, and let us march together toward the gynocentric eschaton. Animus Possession. When feminist women lose their minds and souls. Written by Sophie Marie Eve Riker. Buy now. Links in description.